What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the ASTROLABE, brought to you by King Pilled. I am your host and humble narrator. Shout out to friend of the show, Buck Johnson. You guys should go listen to his conversation with Stormy Waters that dropped yesterday. That's one of many recommendations of shows I'm gonna make on this one. Yes, it is my birthday. It is indeed my birthday. And oh, do I need to open it right now? Oh, okay. My wife is giving me my present, and I need to open it right now. Let's see. Oh, that's great. It is a noticer bell. I'm going to be dinging this one today. Thank you, Mama. Oh, that's great. You guys were here to witness it. I now no longer have to say ding. I can ding. Oh, shout out to my wife. Oh, thank you guys. Thank you for the happy birthdays. My official birthday here is the actual moment. I was born at 5:45 p.m. in Reno. So let's see if I do about 7:45. So about I got about 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours left. 2.5 hours remaining of my of having the remotest claim to saying that I'm in my early 30s. I am now squarely mid-30s, turning 36. 36, but I'm still young at heart. I'm not old, I promise. Please don't say on the internet that I was old. I'll be old someday, but not yet. All right, do me a favor, hit the like button, and I'm streaming on X. Looks like everything's still okay. I got the copyright strike, but it looks like I could still I could still do everything here on YouTube. I'm gonna have to go through copyright school to get the strike taken away, and if I go through copyright school, then I can get the strike taken away after 90 days. I think copyright's kind of gay, like in the digital world. I mean, obviously, I'm a little biased here because I'm the one having to dance around it all the time. But seriously, like if you're producing content on the internet and you're going to copyright someone else who uses it, it's just silly. Like I'm literally giving you more distribution for your thing. You really my 1,000 views of the thing is depriving you of revenue. This is silliness. One of the great things about X is that at least thus far, such things don't happen. You don't get copyright strikes for silly stuff like that. Copyright strikes. Got a ding. All right. Let's get us rocking and rolling here. I've got some good stuff here. There's some interesting things going on with the Secretary of Defense pick with HEGSETH. A rumor that Ron DeSantis is the backup option. We're going to go into some of those rumors. I've got a... Yes. My wife and I share a brain. She knew it. Got some stuff on Daniel Penny's Prosecutor. I mentioned that yesterday. James Lindsay is fat, and we're going to talk about that for just a minute. And then some updates on some previous stories. And Trump has made a couple of very interesting new picks. The guy we talked about yesterday for the SEC, that one has Paul Atkins. That one's been confirmed. And then there's a couple other interesting ones that have dropped. But of course, before we get to that, we have to start with something wholesome, heartwarming. Dudes posting their W's. This account has some great content. This one here just warmed my heart absolutely when someone dropped this in the King Pill Discord the other day. Dudes will pick up the coolest hobbies. Look at this guy just absolutely in his element.
This is my passion here. Every year, this is my passion. I've acquired 5 new houses this year, the windmill, and these 4 homes right here, plus the shoe repair guy. Okay? This village contains everything that a normal village would have. It's got a tavern. It's got a pancake house. It's got a sandwich house. It's got a coffee house. Okay? Ship to shore house. Town hall. Okay? Here, I've got a train depot here, and there's a train depot inside the tunnel. Another one.
He's so excited.
This is Victoria Station. That's another station. Okay. All right. I've got 6 different churches, 6 different denominations. Okay. I've got a police station. I've got, let's see, I've got post office. Jeez. Here's the town square. City Park. Look, S&H green stamps. Barber shop. We got a clothing store over here. Got the works.
Dudes rock. Have I ever let you guys know that that dudes are awesome? We've got in this house, we think dudes rock. Yes, should be one church, of course. All right, so let's make fun of James Lindsay here for a minute. Starting with this one. So James Lindsay is thinks he's a very clever boy. I'm not gonna get into all the details of all of this. There's a couple people on Twitter that have done some decent breakdowns of it, and it's just such a non-issue. It's so incredibly gay. The dude is just publicly humiliating himself. He's so desperate. He's so desperate to be an accepted, recognized member of academia, but he's also just kind of retarded. He can't really help it. He can't really help how retarded he is. So he, of course, was known for his hoax that he perpetrated, along with Helen Pluckrose and Peter Boghossian, where they got some academic places to publish academic journals that were like rewrites of Mein Kampf and some other things, trying to show like discrediting academia, because these are academia purists that don't want to see academia be discredited, and so they feel they must take it upon themselves to save academia from itself, because really they want to have the positions of esteem within academia. They don't want it to go away. They just want to be the ones sitting at the top. Completely disingenuous, bad faith actor. I shouldn't have to tell you guys this. I've been long blocked by him. He has some interesting content that he's contributed in the past. I've definitely learned some things from him, but he is completely revealing himself to be not just disingenuous or bad faith, but not very smart. Like, I'll point you to another great friend of the show, Oren McIntyre, did a fantastic, epic takedown of his conversation, or a clip of his conversation with the Trigonometry boys. Just a bunch of insufferable, like, own fart sniffers. Oren did a masterful job of it, so I don't need to. I would just say everything that he said, so I don't need to recapitulate all that here. But what he's very proud of himself for now is he landed a hoax article against the woke right. This thing he's desperately trying to make a thing that nobody's interested in it being a thing. And so he took an excerpt from the Communist Manifesto and rewrote it, substantially rewrote it. Look at this. Here's a breakdown of a section of it. The red is all of the rewrites that he made. So he thinks he's doing this super clever gotcha where he says, "Oh, I'm going to take Karl Marx's argumentation," and he published it under the pseudonym Magnus Carlsen. He's so clever. I'm going to take Karl Marx's argumentation, and I'm going to change virtually all of it, and then pass it off as, "Oh, look at that. See, you guys are actually Marxists." It's just incredibly gay. Like, if he could have accomplished this effectively, maybe it would have been clever. But the fact that he can't accomplish it effectively shows that it's not clever. I'm going to link these tweets here in the kingpill.substack.com. If you go to the Substack there, I'll link these when I post the episode later on, so you can come read them in more detail if you want. I got other stuff to get to, so we're just going to leave. And I don't think he's someone to take seriously. Like, if you want to be interested, if you're interested in it, you want to go through it. But I don't think he's someone who's worth the time. He wants to be taken seriously. He so desperately wants to be taken seriously. But he's just not a serious person. There's this meme here that is funny. Someone posted this in the King Pill Discord, and I wanted to bring it up on the show, so I just tweeted it out real quick before I went live, and immediately it's getting a bunch of traction, which I wasn't expecting. We should advance our vision for a better society because it's correct. And here's Lindsay off on the side, and yet Karl Marx also advanced his vision for a better society. Curious. I'm very smart. Nice meta meme here. He went back and forth with Sargon of Akkad on it. And this is one of James's takes. He says, the fact is the fact. A leading publication on the so-called woke right. Who so-called it? You're the one who so-called it. You're trying to make fetch. It's not going to happen, man. A leading publication on the so-called woke right published the exact logical structure and much of the same language as Karl Marx in the Communist Manifesto, not something obscure, when it favored their conclusions. They can't cope their way out of that. This is a midwit meme. He is like a living, breathing midwit meme. And Carl Benjamin said, this is so bizarre. The logical structure of an argument is rarely unique to that argument. This is where, and the dude's a mathematician. That was his original specialty. He's like, oh, if we can use the logical structure of the argument, and you use the same logical structure, that means you're the same. Ha ha ha! You're a Marxist. This doesn't follow at all. If Marxists say capitalism is oppressing the proletariat, we ought to overthrow capitalism, that follows the logical structure of immigration is destroying America, we ought to end immigration. But that does not make the latter a communist argument. Suggesting that the logical structure of an argument is enough to render it communist is basically a laughable statement. One could easily fit liberal arguments into such a structure. Are they now too communist? Well, I suppose they are. That's just how it's got to be. Libs or commies. And James Lindsay is very, very obviously a peak shit lib. He is the poster child of shit libbery. So I guess he's a commie. And let's see here. This is all you need to know about the guy. Rumor has it he tried to get this deleted off the internet after he's the one who posted it there. James Lindsay doesn't want anybody to see this video. But we've got it for you.
Somewhere after midnight in my wildest fantasy, somewhere just beyond my reach, there's someone reaching back on me, racing on the thunder and rising with the heat. It's gonna take a Superman to sweep me off my feet.
It's such a good song. The dude literally went out in his yard and set up a camera and started recording himself doing all his cool sword moves. And then he posted it on the internet. And then he regretted it and wanted it taken off the internet. Yes, he is the definition of a lol cow. This is what a lol cow looks like. Of course, the equally lol cowish Babylon Bee guys are gleefully soy-facing over it. And Seth Dillon, James was able to trick these guys into publishing the Communist Manifesto because the woke right is a mirror image of the woke left. They use the same rhetoric, the same methods, the same grievance and identity framework. Their solutions differ, but their wokeness is identical. This is a midwit meme. It's one of those situations where you understand what's going on inside someone's head. You understand where they're coming from, and you understand they believe sincerely every single thing they're saying, and they think nobody else understands it. Like, we must continue to elucidate it for you. You just don't get it, do you? No, we get the point you're trying to make, and it's dumb. It's retarded. You don't understand what woke is. You don't understand the current political factions. You don't understand the history behind these different political factions. Here's another shout out. The Prudentialists just had Ryan Turnipseed on talking about the evolution of the right over the last basically 80 years or so. Very, very good. Absolute must listen. Especially his conclusion. I think his conclusion was very, very insightful. I agreed with every single thing he said. But like, have you ever had an argument with someone like this where you're like, no, I understand what you're saying, and I can tell you don't understand what I'm saying. And it's bad enough when you're just going back and forth, and they're just engaging in good faith, and they think, no, you don't understand. Let me explain it another way. No, dude, like, I frickin' understand what you're trying to say. You don't understand, and I can tell you don't understand. But then they start getting an attitude. And they're like, oh, you're just like too dumb, or no, you're too evil, or you're predisposed to not understand what I'm saying. No, fuck you, man. You are too dumb to understand what you're talking about. Every time you open your mouth, every time you talk, you just reveal to everyone that you're retarded. Like, for your own sake, just stop posting. You know, they're like these like hangers on. They're trying to cling to, they recognize where the political winds are flowing, and they're now trying to position themselves as the official opposition. Look at us, normie, sensible people. They're irrelevant. I mean, they're fun to dunk on. But there comes a point where, like, okay, dunk on them for a period of time, and then they just have to be ignored. Charles Haywood says, this is dumb. Woke is a colloquial, black ethno-narcissist-derived term for left. Right-left is an oxymoron, labeling those on the right who seek power in order to use power, as the left always does and the American right never has, is just a way to say, be a loser. Also, Lindsay is fat. This is the big takeaway. This right here is the takeaway. The most important tweet of the day. Lindsay is fat. All right, on to other stuff. So vaccine researcher Peter Hotez says multiple viruses will be unleashed on America the day after Trump takes office. Wow. Science is getting pretty fantastic. They could actually target the exact day that multiple viruses are going to take off. Isn't that incredible?
Here's the reason why we need to care about this stuff, Nicole, is that we have some big picture stuff coming down the pike starting on January 21st. Mr. Bloomberg mentioned H5N1. That I'm really worried about. It's all over wild birds on the western part of the United States and going up in the north. It's getting into the poultry. We're seeing sporadic human cases, no human-to-human transmission yet, but that could happen. It's in the cattle. It's in the milk. And
you know what's going to happen here? The opposition to RFK is going to be that by deregulating or minimizing the influence of the lobbies in the food industry, the food and health industry, he's causing the spread of diseases. He's a criminal. He's a crook.
That's just the beginning. We have another major coronavirus likely brewing in Asia. We've had SARS in 2002, SARS-2, COVID-19 in 2019. And we know these viruses are jumping from bats to people thousands of times a year. But there's still more. We know that we have a big problem with mosquito-transmitted viruses all along the Gulf Coast, where I am here in Texas. So we're expecting dengue and possibly Zika virus coming back, or a Puche virus, maybe even yellow fever. And there's more.
Holy crap, is it going to be smallpox too? The plague? Nuclear apocalypse? Literally everything is all congealing on us on January 21st. Oh my God.
And we have all this sharp rise in vaccine preventable diseases going up because of, in part, the anti-vaccine activism that's so prominent right now. We have a 5-fold rise in pertussis cases, whooping cough over the last year, 15 measles outbreaks this year. We've got polio.
I wonder how much of that is related to importing a bunch of third worlders and having them all live together in squalor. You think that might be contributing to the rise of some novel diseases? I want to be careful with some of the things I say here because we're kind of pushing the limits of YouTube's terms of services across multiple fronts here. But I'll just say, also Babylon B.
That's been in the wastewater in New York State. All that's going to come crashing down on January 21st on the Trump administration. We need a really, really good team to be able to handle this.
All of that is going to collapse on them on the 21st. Man, what a crystal ball this guy has. And he needs a team. So that's the takeaway from all of this. They need a team. This is more like shadow government stuff. Them openly talking about creating their shadow government, their shadow cabinet. I think this guy needs to be investigated. You know who else needs to be investigated? Physiognomy. Physiognomy never lies. This So this is Daniel Penny's prosecutor. Greg Price says, you can't make this up. Daphne Yoran is the Manhattan prosecutor currently throwing the book at Daniel Penny. In 2019, she gave a reduced sentence to a black man who murdered an Asian college professor as he was withdrawing cash from an ATM. She said that it was under the guise of restorative justice and ended up giving him 10 years for manslaughter after he was originally charged with murder. So the dude was withdrawing cash from an ATM. Guy walked up and murdered him. She gave him 10 years for manslaughter because restorative justice. Now she's attempting to imprison an innocent man who protected a group of people on the subway. UWS professor's killer receives reduced sentence as part of restorative justice program. Dr. Young Kun Kim of Lehman College was killed last December after being pushed during a robbery at an ATM machine, on Broadway between 96th and 97th Streets. The assailant, 52-year-old Michael Lee, was arrested and initially charged with murder. But Kim's case took a different turn when an assistant district attorney, Daphne Yoran, approached Kim's family about trying for a different outcome. She contacted the professor's son, Jin-Soo Kim, to see if he'd be interested in pursuing restorative justice instead of a traditional prosecution, Gothamist reported. I wonder what she told him would happen if he didn't agree to that.
Daphne Yoran, not too long ago, prosecuted a man who was robbing somebody at a phone booth. The robber pushed the man down. He was old, you can see there. Pushed the man, it was an ATM, sorry. Pushed the man down, he hit his head. He later died of brain contusion. But she said, look, we should pursue this idea of restorative justice. He didn't mean to kill him. So in that case, she wanted leniency for a criminal who accidentally killed someone. Right. But in this, Daphne Yoran.
Combine this with the fact that Alvin Bragg reduced 60% of all felony cases last year to lesser charges, yet his office is now trying to lock up a guy who protected people from those criminals. Now, I'm old enough to remember, let's see, this was 2018, 2019, so it was like 2015, 2016, 2017, that all of this stuff about like social justice and restorative justice and climate justice and all these sorts of things were the domain of college students. This is just a bunch of college students who are protesting Jordan Peterson and Milo Yiannopoulos and Ann Coulter, whoever else. They were doing they're like stop big oil things and all this sort of stuff. And a bunch of talking heads were like, "Oh, it's a bunch of stupid kids. Don't worry about them." Some of us were like, "Hey, this kind of a thing. Like you could see where this is going." All the talking heads are, no, it's just a bunch of stupid kids doing their stupid kid stuff. You have to pay it any attention. And literally within 2 years from then, they were substantially overhauling the literal justice system of the country. The actual law enforcement mechanism that defines the structure of the country. If you didn't see that trajectory coming back then, you should wonder why. You should have a little bit of humility. Maybe some of us knew what we were talking about. Here's the woman herself talking about how she reduced a clear-cut felony murder charge to manslaughter because she felt sorry for the past trauma that the armed robber had endured.
So I'm going to give you an example of something that I did with a recent case of mine, and this was never
That's a man.
has never been done in my office. I had a murder case where the defendant did not intentionally kill the victim. He went into an ATM on the Upper West Side and tried to rob an individual. Unfortunately, it was an older individual. He was 86. And in the course of the robbery, he fell to the ground, and as a result, he died. This is, under the law, a felony murder, which is akin to intentional murder. However,
Under the law, it's felony murder. So she's admitting the premise here that we need to change the law. What do you call a foreign-born person who comes into your country, insinuates herself into it, and then seeks to change the laws? What category would that fall under?
I first got the case, I learned, I took the time to learn about the defendant. And it was a strong case, so it wasn't about a whodunit. I knew immediately who did it. I could prove it. I could take it to trial that day and win it. But it wasn't about that. It was that the more I learned about the defendant and his life and the circumstances, the kinds of things that Jarrell was talking about, that one should take into account the trauma of that individual, I really felt incredibly sorry for him that he had gotten to that point in his life where he felt like there was no other choice but to commit this robbery.
You know, there's a place for this sort of thing. That's what's so pathologically evil about this. There is a place for sympathizing with the circumstances in someone's life that led them to a point where they did something really stupid that killed someone else in a very predictable way. There's a place for that. It's good to have that sense, to remember the humanity in other people and to take that into consideration, to see them as people created in the image of God who have been stained by sin. But to take that really good, pure thing and turn it into this, where you're effectively creating an entirely different legal standard for a certain class of people who are the ones who are more in need of the enforcement of a legal standard like that, just as a matter of pure statistics, than anyone else. And creating an incentive structure where they're more likely to do it in the future. And especially in a country that is not yours. You were not born in that country. She was born in Israel. Here's why she decided to get into law.
And thinking about what it is that I've been doing all these years, it's actually very clear why I became a prosecutor. My father was a Holocaust survivor, and his parents were murdered. And so I grew up with somebody whose parents were murdered and all of the emotional implications that go along with that. Now, as a kid, learning a lot about the Holocaust and knowing about my family's experience, something that really, really bothered me was that nobody was ever held accountable for what was done to my grandparents and everyone else. And I remember a story that was being told when I was a kid.
No one was held
about
accountable.
This woman that right before she was shot into a pit that she herself had to dig and killed, she yelled out to the Nazis and said, "You will be held accountable. One day you will be held accountable. You're going to pay for what you've done." And it was told as a story of bravery, but I didn't take it that way. I was devastated and angry by the fact that nobody, in fact, was ever held accountable. And so look at what I do. I hold people accountable for killing other people. And
You do? You hold people accountable for killing other people. Yet you just finished telling us a story of how you worked around the system to prevent someone from being held accountable for killing someone else. She's just laying it right out for us here. I am motivated by a desire for revenge.
So this has basically been my life's mission, is to hold people accountable for killing other people, that every life is worthy of being accounted for. Now, what holding people accountable means has changed for me.
Yes, I'm sure it has. You know what? I am a really, really big fan of Israeli nationalism. I really think that Israel needs to exist. It's very important that Israel exists. In fact, I think that all Israeli people, all people who claim the title of Jew, have a very important responsibility to relocate there, to preserve its existence. They need to carve out their little section of land, and they all need to go there and protect it. I think it's very, very important that they do. And the only way that they're going to be able to do that is if they go there and enforce a multicultural society. They need to make sure it's as multicultural as possible. Take the great lessons that they've learned and go create this lovely utopia-like destination. Take all these great ideas about accountability and restorative justice, the need for diversity, concentrate them there just as much as possible. Very, very big fan of that, and I will eagerly promote anybody who encourages it. Her track record would make any guilty defendant tremble. Daphne Yoren, Assistant District Attorney in Manhattan, has investigated and prosecuted scores of the city's most high-profile and notorious homicides. Her commitment to holding killers accountable is fueled by a sense of responsibility as the daughter of a Holocaust survivor with grandparents murdered by Nazis. In 2019, she had the opportunity to prosecute neo-Nazi James Harris Jackson, a Hitler fan who said he came to New York City with the intention of killing black men and murdered Timothy Kaufman. It was the first time a white supremacist was prosecuted as a domestic terrorist in the U.S. This prosecution closed a circle for me. I got to hold a Nazi accountable for killing an innocent person, the senior trial counsel says. These are the types of things that a prosecutor admitting them in any context should automatically remove them from qualification for office. I'm taking personal vendettas into my practice of prosecution. But her idea of holding people accountable doesn't necessarily mean prison time. When she prosecuted Matthew Lee for inadvertently killing an elderly professor while robbing him at an ATM. Inadvertently killing him while robbing him at an ATM. The war on language is just so subversive. She felt that, quote, a long prison sentence was not appropriate under these circumstances and determined to resolve the case in a different way. In collaboration with the victim's family, who got to see the defendant as a human being, not the monster they imagined, she successfully spearheaded the first restorative justice case as an NYC homicide. Yoran, wife of Peruvian artist Ana de Orbegoso, began her career at a time when the unspoken rule was women had to wear skirts in court. She said to her boss, "Do you want me to wear a skirt or do you want me to think? Because I can't do both at the same time." I was then the first woman to wear a pantsuit on trial in New York County. Wow! She's just breaking down all sorts of barriers, isn't she? It's almost like that's her purpose there. We can't live with people like this. You can't have a country. You can't have a functioning nation when people like this are around. All right. Let's keep it going. So I mentioned the thing about the drones, the UFOs, whatever they are. FBI agents investigating the anomalous drone incursions above U.S. military bases are now reporting drones above their personal homes. Who is flying drones?
I don't know who could have possibly done this.
Well, Will, one of the ships was in fact inspected by the Coast Guard and they couldn't find anything. The thing is that there were several other suspicious ships in the region that they never got to. And Will, it gets worse. Just a couple of months earlier, there were several mystery drone flights over our nuclear testing range in Nevada, just north of Las Vegas. And again, nothing was done. And it gets even worse. Some of the FBI agents that have been assigned to look into this have reported drones flying over their homes as if to say, hey, we know where you are. And so I really think that what this does is it boils down to an administration that doesn't take these threats seriously. You just had on the previous segment a drone attack on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's house. Of course, we've seen with Russia and Ukraine the utility of drones.
Right.
And yet, somehow we're preventing our warriors from defending their own bases by saying, oh no, you need to get permission from the Attorney General or from Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas. No, that's wrong. Base commanders have an inherent authority within their command to defend their bases.
Well, why wasn't that done, Chuck? That'll be my final question for you. Okay, there's the issue of where these came from. The second, why wasn't anything done?
Well, the fear was there may be some collateral damage that could happen. They also wanted to use some of these advanced teams that they had, these anti-drone teams. There's only 2 of them. Mayorkas has not allowed more to be built. The problem with worrying about collateral damage is that any damage that would happen would be entirely the fault of the People's Republic of China. It's the People's Republic of China that's sending these drones into U.S. airspace, violating our airspace, just like they did with the spy balloon early last year that, as you recall, they never shot down until it got over the Atlantic Ocean.
Just to clarify on the way out, is that known then, Chuck? It's the PRC that flew these drones, or that's your suspicion?
It's my suspicion because they were large enough. They had to be nation-state actors, and I believe only Russia and China have the capability to do this. And given the financial state of affairs with Russia versus China, I'm 99.5% sure that these were the Chinese operating these drones.
Incredible. Absolutely needs to be followed, more understood about this future of warfare, which is perhaps, as you point out with Benjamin Netanyahu, the present of warfare. Chuck DeVore, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I think anybody who says they know exactly what's going on here right now is way too confident. For me, jury is completely out. I can think of a whole bunch of different explanations for this. And I got to say my gut is leaning in the direction of these are not foreign actors. This is something domestic. And by foreign, I mean not just like foreign on the earth, but foreign off the earth either. I think what we're seeing is some sort of a domestic thing going on. And I don't think that there's one thing. I think there's a lot of things happening. When I talk about disclosure, there's like this disclosure of dark technology, of 0-point energy and all these different things. I'm not implying that there's a secretive, coordinated effort. There may be secretive, coordinated efforts within it, but this is also just how advanced technology gets released to the public. Just gradually gets leaked out commercially somehow. And so it's possible that this is hostile actors, hostile foreign actors. It's possible it's hostile domestic actors. It's also possible it's not hostile domestic actors. I think that we're in a time of great transformation and great change. And, in retrospect, I got to give I've always had a soft spot. We do the schizo streams in the King Pill Discord because I've always had a soft spot for the crazy conspiracy people. I kind of try to keep them at arm's length a little bit. And every once in a while they get to be a little too much. And so I have to tune out for a while, but I'm not necessarily saying this is one and the same thing, but I think that the Q people are going to, in retrospect, they're getting more and more validated in a lot of ways, and I think it's really hard to deny that. Whether they've been exactly right in everything, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, like, directionally, they've been digging into productive corners of the world. And lots of those things are starting to bear fruit. I think it's very clear that there are domestic military influences that are not part of the regime, that want to see the overthrow of the regime. They may not necessarily conceive of the regime in the same way that we would. I'm not saying they're like operating from the same worldview as like our little corner of the internet here, but they represent, you might call them like what Tom Luongo has referred to in the banking sector as like sovereigntists, people who have a vested interest in America and want to protect America's interests. And it's been abundantly clear for a very long time that there's all sorts of foreign invasion. So it doesn't take very much to get a collection of those interests together who may be focused on various different aspects of that foreign invasion, but collectively they recognize that there is a foreign invasion that's been happening all over the place. And we're in the world of whatever, 5th, 6th, 8th, 10th generation warfare. I don't know. I've been saying for a while now that World War III isn't coming. World War III has been here. We're in World War III. We're probably closer to the end of World War III than the beginning of it, if I had to guess, in time, in terms of time. So I'm just going to keep an eye on these things that are happening and see what's coming. There's also the possibility, like I said, that this is like regime military stuff, planning to come hunt us all down and lock us in FEMA camps. That possibility is out there as well. I put those odds very, very low. But I think in 10 years, we're going to live in a very, very, very different world than we do right now. Shout out to Politically Catholic, man. $100 super chat. Thank you, my friend. He says, happy birthday, old man. Syllogisms are communists. That's why Marx rejected the existence of logic itself. Get owned, woke, right? Yeah, right. I can't believe a mathematician would be saying such dumb things like this that should be so self-evidently true, but it should be so self-evidently true to him why these things are retarded, but it just shows what motivated reasoning does to a motherfucker. And a member chat from Blue Skittle, been a member for 1 month, a member of the King Pilled. You can become a channel member here, $5 a month. One way you can support the show. He says, happy birthday, best news show. Thank you, friend. I appreciate it. All right, let's keep this going here. Another update on Eric Adams. This guy's really living his best life. This is the mayor of New York.
We were a country and a city that led the globe in innovation. And look at us now. It's time for a change. And I've said this for years, and I'm happy that Elon is going to be part of those who are moving that change forward. We should not be afraid of Bitcoin. Remember y'all laughed at me when I first got my Bitcoin? Who's laughing now? Go look at my Bitcoin now. You all mock me. You're taking your first 3 paychecks in Bitcoin. What's wrong with you? Now you wish you would have done it. And so I am happy that we're having people who are willing to think outside the box to do the things we need to do. Why are we afraid of AI? We shouldn't be afraid of AI. China's not afraid of AI. We have been holding back. This has been a racehorse that wanted to run at its right pace, and we've been holding back that racehorse out of fear of being canceled. And now you have a bunch of people that are not afraid of being canceled.
If this dude keeps it up, he is going to be the mayor of New York City for a while. The guy's going full MAGA now, and he is absolutely loving it. He's a masterclass in political grifting and power politics. He has been navigating it fantastically. There's no question in my mind that there's direct back channels with him and Trump, or at least Trump's inner circle, coordinating this. Because having the mayor of New York as an ally, even if he stays Democrats and you have your kind of kayfabe and whatever from time to time, but having him ultimately on board and cooperating on some of these issues like immigration and innovation. You know what he's basically preaching Elon Musk's message here, or Mark Andreessen's message. He's snugging himself right up to those tech titans because he knows which way things are going. And suddenly now he has a tremendous opportunity to create a great legacy for himself. He could be the one who saved New York City, pulled it back from the brink of collapse, and returned it to a thriving, safe powerhouse. I mentioned this one yesterday. Tesla is partnering with Native American tribes to circumvent the anti-competitive state laws that prohibit manufacturers from selling cars directly to consumers. It says here, Tesla is ramping up efforts to open showrooms on tribal lands where it can sell directly to consumers, circumventing laws in states that bar vehicle manufacturers from also being retailers in favor of the dealership model. Mohegan Sun, a casino and entertainment complex in Connecticut owned by the federally recognized Mohegan tribe, announced this week that the California-based electric automaker will open a showroom with a sales and delivery center that fall on its sovereign property where the state's law doesn't apply. The news comes after another new Tesla showroom was announced in June, set to open in 2025, on lands of the Oneida Indian Nation in upstate New York. And Joshua Steinman, who is a former member, I believe, of Trump's National Security Council, says nuclear power next. I like this sort of thing. This is very clever. I could just imagine. So Tesla, obviously being associated with Elon, is now having to deal with a bunch of regime hostility that they shouldn't have to, and which is kind of a funny turn from them being like the green energy darlings to it's like a Nazi company or something. And so they're just going to navigate right around the regulatory hurdles by teaming up with like the properties of the regime, the pets of the regime. Well, what are they going to do here? They're going to try to like create some sort of legal carve out where you can play this game forever. Just stay ahead of them. I'm imagining them as the crying, soy jacking Wojak. Like, no, he can't keep getting away with it. This one here, I want to get this in because I bookmarked it from a few days ago, and I don't want to get too far away from November 27th. Ken Paxton, Attorney General of Texas, announced Texas sues BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard for illegally conspiring to manipulate energy markets, driving up costs for consumers. So this is very interesting, very a guy leading the charge in the lawfare pushback against the regime, specifically going after BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, and connections to the energy markets. We're hitting all the buzz. We're hitting all the not these dings, but we're hitting a bunch of dings here as we go. Texas will not tolerate the illegal weaponization of the financial industry in service of a destructive, politicized environmental agenda. So here's the statement. Attorney General Ken Paxton sued BlackRock, State Street Corporation, and Vanguard Group, three of the largest institutional investors in the world, for conspiring to artificially constrict the market for coal through anti-competitive trade practices. Interestingly, this angle on the ESG movement, that it's a way of basically creating an energy cartel, the first place I heard that suggested was from Peter Thiel. Do with that what you will. Over several years, the three asset managers acquired substantial stock holdings in every significant publicly held coal producer in the United States, thereby gaining the power to control the policies of the coal companies. Using their combined influence over the coal market, the investment cartel collectively announced in 2021 their commitment to weaponize their shares to pressure the coal companies to accommodate green energy goals. To achieve this, the investment companies pushed to reduce coal output by more than half by 2030. So once again, you have an organization that exists for a certain purpose, and then you have people in the who are insinuating themselves into that organization to begin turning that organization legally against its own purposes. BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street utilized the Climate Action 100 and the Net Zero Asset Managers Initiative to signal their mutual intent to reduce the output of thermal coal, which predictably increased the cost of electricity for Americans across the United States. The only reason you would do something like this, all the political formula reasons that are given, the climate agenda, ESG, whatever, all that stuff, that's all bullshit. The reason why you would do something like this is because you want to hamstring American energy policy as a way of keeping America tethered to the global economy. These firms also deceived thousands of investors who elected to invest in non-ESG funds to maximize their profits. So, like, people who are anti-ESG that might be able to direct their funds here, they're like, well, I'm going to go invest in coal so I can get away from this ESG stuff. And here you have the institutional investors sneaking in the back door and getting them anyways. Yet these firms pursued ESG strategies, notwithstanding the defendant's representation to the contrary. Deliberately and artificially constricting supply increased prices and enabled the investment companies to produce extraordinary revenue gains. This conspiracy violated multiple federal laws that prevent a major shareholder or a group of shareholders from using their shares to lessen competition or engaging in other anti-competitive schemes. Further, the companies broke Texas antitrust and deceptive trade practices laws. Texas will not tolerate the illegal weaponization of the financial industry in service of a destructive, politicized environmental agenda. BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street formed a cartel to rig the coal market, artificially reduce the energy supply, and raise prices, said Attorney General Paxton. Their conspiracy has harmed American energy production and hurt consumers. This is a stunning violation of state and federal law. A coalition of 10 other states joined Attorney General Paxton on the lawsuit. The Busby Law Firm and Cooper and Kirk are serving as outside counsel. There's BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street formed a cartel to rig the coal market. Like, this sounds like something I would see Ian Carroll tweet. But here we have it from Ken Paxton. $5 super chat from Bayer Alonzo. Says, happy birthday, King. God bless you and the fam. I love you. I love you too. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, so let's see. I've got a number of different things here on Trump's various cabinet officials. Number one here is Stephen Miller. Now, however, some of them are good. This is a good one. Great stuff from Miller here. Looks like the admin is very serious about securing the border. Between Tom Homan and Stephen Miller, I think that they're pretty serious about this mass deportations thing. Note when Stephen Miller lists off a number of different regions in the world, there's one in particular that he doesn't mention. And I think that's very interesting. Let me play this clip.
But everything in the world is going to change on January 20th. Because the President of the United States is going to use every single legal, diplomatic, and financial tool to halt the entry of all illegal aliens into this country. There will be no benefits, there will be no entry, there will be no asylum, there will be no admission. You may be prosecuted, you will certainly be arrested, and you will absolutely be deported. The entire world, Mexico, Northern Triangle, Central America, South America, Africa, Asia, the Middle East, will get this message.
Listen to that again.
Triangle, Central America, South, be deported. The entire world, Mexico, Northern Triangle,
so it's like Central America,
South America,
South America, Africa,
Asia, the Middle
East,
will get this message.
What regions were not mentioned?
There is no unlawful route to enter the United States of America. Every presidential authority, including his absolute authority under Article 2 to defend the territorial sovereignty of the United States, will be used, from the Department of Defense to the Department of Justice to Homeland Security and every single other lawful authority at his disposal. It will be the end of the invasion. It will be the beginning of the liberation. But
the end of the invasion, the beginning of the liberation. Right. Didn't say anything about Europe. Didn't say anything about Australia. Didn't say anything about Canada. Didn't say anything about Polynesians. Are we safe out here? Yeah, our Polynesian bros are safe. Antarctica bros, we're back. Yeah. And this has been he has been the biggest immigration hawk probably in Trump's, or vocally in Trump's inner circle from the very beginning. He has been 100% consistent on all of this. And the libs go into absolute seizures of rage anytime they see him around. That Jewish sense of righteousness directed at the right targets. I've said it before, even if they do just half of what they promise. Yeah. There was a couple other really good replies down here. I'm fired up. Stephen Miller just pulled off the Apollo Creed ring intro from Rocky 4. I think there was a couple others. Steve, the Jewish son-in-law Trump should have had. He's the great Jew, perhaps in the history of Jews. Believe me, nobody's ever seen a Jew like him. Big guy, strong guy came up to me with tears in his eyes. He said, sir, you have the greatest Jews. So true. We love our Jews, don't we, folks? That's so good. I like how the lab didn't just clone Goebbels, but made him Jewish so journals can't get away with calling him Goebbels. My favorite Jew, and it's not even close. Oh, man. It seemed like Laura Ingraham was kind of uncomfortable with this, but it's hard to tell because she just always looks like that. Here's something from Benny Johnson. FBI whistleblower Steve Friend reveals open operation inside FBI to sabotage Kash Patel nomination, which should not at all be a surprise. I want to say friend of the show, but I don't even know if he knows we exist. A guy who appears on the show very often, Eric Doherty. He said last night, reminder, opposition is a good sign. If everything was flowing smoothly, that would be cause for concern. Opposition is a good sign.
Steve, how you doing, brother?
Great to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Bro, this stuff that I'm watching with Kash Patel, did Iran actually hack Kash Patel, or was Iran actually some of the people who used to work with James Comey and Andrew McCabe?
Let me drop some knowledge on you. Please. So the FBI has their rule book. It's called the DIOG, Domestic Investigations Operations Guide. And there's a portion in there. It's called Appendix G. And it basically stipulates that the FBI can open up a full counterintelligence investigation on anyone who they believe could be the target, like the victim of a recruitment scheme from a foreign actor. So that leak indicates that there's actually a full counterintelligence investigation open on Kash Patel at this time. They're doing it for his benefit, of course, but they're going to get full access through national security letters to his banking records, all of his electronic communications, again, to protect him against that recruiting.
And the fact that that information found its way to the front page of CNN.
You should pick up on the sarcasm here. He's saying that the stories that are dropping about this publicly indicate that there is a full counterintelligence investigation that has been opened on him. And Kash Patel would know this as well. Because if you've listened to his Sean Ryan interview or his conversation with Steve Bannon, you know the work that the jobs that he had before. Like he's lived this world himself, so he knows full well what's going on right now. In the name of protecting him, the FBI is performing an entire colonoscopy on him.
And is just, I mean, they just must have great sources, really.
I mean, look, Andy McCabe over at CNN now, I'm sure he's just giving guidance back to his Rolodex of contacts within the FBI.
That's right. These people, they're such sick bastards, aren't they? So expect this playbook to be used against Kash Patel. You are saying that they are now scraping through everything that Kash has ever done, even though he received awards for his work inside the Justice Department, 16 years inside the Justice Department, then working for special operations and being one of the lawyers protecting the highest echelons of military service. They're going to go back through and they're going to try and sabotage Kash because it's a threat to the system.
They are also trying to cull through his foundation. Look, I was pinged by NBC to provide my comments about the Fight with Kash Foundation, which basically serves to assist military veterans and whistleblowers. And they want to, I don't know, paint some sort of corruption scandal on that. Look, my experience with Kash Patel was, we're talking about a guy who has some investigative skills. 2 years ago, during Thanksgiving, actually, I got a phone call from a number I didn't know, but I was getting lots of weird phone calls at the time because my name had just become out. And I answer it, and it's a gentleman who says, hey, this is Kash Patel. And I have the foundation that supports whistleblowers. I would like to give you, because you're unpaid and definitely suspended forever by the FBI, $5,000. My foundation is going to give you that donation to get your family through Christmas. I don't want any attention on this. Don't tell anybody. This is just something that I do because I believe in. That's the character of the man who is tapped to become the next FBI director. Wow.
Andrew says, $5 super chat. He says, you know how I know Kash Patel is squeaky clean? They can't even make up stuff about him or find an anonymous source to say he graped him. Yes. Right. Is there anything down in the replies down here? Yeah, nothing in particular. CNN acknowledges that Kash Patel's chances of becoming FBI director are climbing ever higher. The key number here is 0. That's how many GOP senators have come out against him. Kash Patel's odds to lead the FBI seem to be climbing ever higher. And
Steve,
from what I've gathered, just knowing the background of Kash Patel, the role that he's held with Trump in the past, him as FBI director is a non-negotiable. They backed down on Matt Gaetz. They are not backing down on Kash Patel. He's a non-negotiable. And I think this is why you're seeing the libs freak out and scream about him, but you're not really seeing any Republicans, even the ones who were like Mark Wayne Mullen, who was openly critical of Gaetz. He's fully endorsing Kash Patel. Kash Patel is going to be the FBI director. At the very least, he's going to be the acting FBI director if he's appointed through recess appointments. I don't think there's any possible way. I mean, I'll admit it if I wind up being wrong, but I don't think that there's any possible way that Kash Patel does not wind up being the FBI director. And the dude is fucking bonkers. He is an insane man who has a major bone to pick with the FBI. So if he winds up there, it is going to be fireworks. Who knows exactly how it's going to all pan out, but it is going to be fireworks. So there's some continued conversation here on on this subject. One of my favorite news stories that has come out recently. So Trump posted this, standing for the audio only listeners. It's an AI photo of Trump standing on a ridge, looking out over Canadian mountains with a Canadian flag next to him, and he posted it on Truth Social and said, "Oh, Canada." Now it's funny. He said this to Justin Trudeau. Is reported as if it was kind of like a real life shit post sort of, but there's people who are actually taking this seriously. Now the first one here, I guess, kind of stretching the definition of people. But here's Michael Cohen. See, there's no reason for this. Why does it just randomly not work? We went multiple episodes with it not doing that. I was actually sharing the screen. All right. Let me know. I'm going to hit play again, and I'm just going to let it play. You guys are on a delay. I'm just going to let it play. Hopefully it works this time.
When China, after Trump becomes president, goes in and invades Taiwan and takes them over. When Russia goes in and takes over Ukraine, because Trump cuts them off financially as well as militarily, and then he walks in as well into Poland. Remember what I turned around and I said to you that Trump was going to do? When I turned around and I said he's going to see this like in the olden days with the kings, when it was all about amassing land, more land and more land. Remember I said that he was going to go ahead and take over Canada. And then after Canada, he's going to roll the military into Mexico. And then the new borders will all be the shoreline. I said it. I've been saying this for the longest time. Why? Because I know him. I understand him. He sees somebody else like a Vladimir Putin amassing land. He's going to be doing it for himself. And when
libs posting Trump's W's. They are, God, I've seen what you've done for other people. I beg these people, please manifest this. Will this into reality. Leaf Bros, we're coming for you. Taco Bros, we're coming for you. And here's Jesse Waters talking about it.
Let's just be clear. We're not going to make Canada the 51st state. We'll make it 51 and 52. You make Western Canada, that'll be Republican. Eastern Canada, that'll be Democrat, so you keep the electoral balance there. So many reasons to make this a state. I think it has the third largest oil reserves in the world.
Oh, a lot.
So that makes us an energy behemoth. It's the most well-educated country in the world because we need a little help in that department. Talk about mining, agriculture, fishing, AI, tech, real estate, Canada, you name it, they got it. We'll never probably lose another Winter Olympics. We'll have all of their skaters and skiers. Wow. I mean, good luck, Sweden. And they share our cultural heritage. They share our language. It's just a no-brainer. Now, I don't know if Canada is going to go along with it, but there's ways to maybe change their opinion.
Do you want to end it there?
I'll end it there.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
The Army's minuscule, but that's fine. We'll pay to protect them as a state. But we're doubling the size of the country, America. Think about it.
Thank you, Joe.
I never expected this story to keep going. And, obviously they're doing a little memeing, but I don't know. Lots of things are going to change really, really significantly over the next several years. And yeah, I don't know. A few months ago, I would have totally written this off as just jokes and everything. But now, it's a very natural progression, like geopolitical progression. If you're thinking about the American empire coming into adulthood, we've talked before here about it being basically it's like a teenager right now. We haven't actually had an independent American empire yet. Well, I mean, if you're going to go the empire direction, if you're going to become the world's dominant power, then especially in a more multipolar sort of a scenario, and I understand there's some tension between that, but I think you guys get it. The controlling the land to the north and the land to the south, and it's been kind of more or less that way informally. Just make it formal. Just make it explicit. At the very least to the north. We can talk about Mexico. I'd be more inclined to just give all of Mexico and the Northern Triangle just create a I don't know what you would call it, a pan Latin American federation, and put Bukele at the head of it. Got a great ally to the south. I don't know. We might have something cooking here. I like this take from never seen this guy before, but he said, "Make no mistake, Trump is simultaneously engaged in a massive public humiliation ritual of Castro Jr. and the globalist proxy states of Canada and Mexico ahead of his second term, while said deployments also act as underlying signal to the would-be sovereign peoples of both nations." I think he makes a really good point here. If and when Trudeau and Sheinbaum earn the terrific terror campaign of the Trump admin, their peoples won't look to Trump as their tormentor, but rather the governments that sold them out for generations, offshoring all means of production and wealth generation while letting international crime syndicates terrorize them on an active level in the South and on a financial level in the North, through the rapid inflation of domestic housing to line the pockets of foreign billionaires. Trump said he would make America great again. If you're a regime on the outside looking in, that promise looks like a threat, and we'll have Canadians, Mexicans, and Europeans at all wanting the same. Behold, the city on a hill. I think this is a very nice prediction. I think it's something worth throwing some energy behind and manifesting, because it's one of those predictions that you can actually kind of bootstrap rhetorically. French Canadians. Okay, so the French Canadians, they're going to have to work extra hard to get accepted. Whoops. Wrong window. Got to switch it up here. The French Canadians are, they can't be trusted. You guys are going to have to earn your way in. Yeah, Josh Ham says the best southern border is the Panama Canal. Right. Yes, exactly. Okay, so Chad Cronister was this sheriff that for Hillsborough County in Florida, COVID tyrant, and Trump announced him as his DEA nominee. Now, my take on this was, I can't remember if I talked about this on the show or if I just tweeted about it, but my take on this was, sheriff is an extremely important role. Sheriffs have basically unilateral enforcement power within their domain. They can arrest federal agents and throw them out of the state. Sheriff is a very, very powerful role. So if this guy, which it seems by all accounts, this guy was genuinely a COVID tyrant, lots of people that I like and trust and respect were all very upset about this and said very nasty, seems very true things about him, then getting him out of the sheriff's role to get a new sheriff in there, to me, looks like a win for the people of Hillsborough County. And putting him as the DEA pick, like, all right, whooped the Drug Enforcement Agency. Okay. That means that you're putting a guy here in this position with, the DEA is going to play a major role with respect to the border and narcotics trafficking and all that sort of thing. So give him his domain and let him operate in it. As the head of the DEA, he's not going to be shutting down people's homes or anything. Maybe, come back to me 2 years from now when Chad Cronister is the new Anthony Fauci, public enemy number one, who's masterminding the whole thing, and I'll say I was wrong. But to me, this is like a net improvement. Remove him from his sheriff's position, give the Hillsborough County people an opportunity to elect a better one, and then he just has his narrow domain that he works on in the DEA. With the rest of the health domain in the country is all going to be under RFK's purview. I don't really give a shit what his COVID takes were if he's going to be the head of the DEA. But there was such an outrage against him that he released a statement saying that he was withdrawing his name. And today, Trump announced that he did not pull out. Trump pulled him out. This is what Trump said. The Wall Street Journal is becoming more and more obnoxious and unreadable. Today's main headline is Trump's DEA pick pulls out in latest setback. With all that's happening in the world, this is their number one story of the day. Besides, he didn't pull out. I pulled him out because I did not like what he said to my pastors and other supporters. But more importantly, what's my latest setback? I just won the presidency of the United States. They haven't written a good story about me in years. Somebody over there ought to look at what they're doing. The only one worse than them is stupid China-centric Forbes magazine. I love that Forbes magazine just catches a stray in all this. So there's another one of those stories that I think there's a number of explanations for this. It could be Trump's looking at this as like, okay, DEA, I need some guy that's going to be good on drugs and immigration and help the immigration effort. And he looks good, and he's a sheriff, and he's from Florida, and part of the Florida occupied government. So make him the DEA. Someone recommended him. He's like, sounds good. But he's not like sitting here thinking long and hard about who's going to be my pick for DEA. Now, the stories about him during COVID were not like minor issues. These weren't like small stories. They were pretty big. So I find it kind of surprising that Trump didn't know about them before he endorsed him. So this could be Trump genuinely gave him the nomination based on someone else's endorsement that he trusted. And then there was a big bunch of blowback, and he was like, all right, this is bad. We're not going to do that. I'm pulling him out. And it sounds like if Trump pulled him and he announced that he was the one withdrawing, well, it seems like he may have just made even more of an enemy of Trump. But yes, as Politically Catholic here says, in other words, Trump is listening to the new media, us, and bashing the legacy media. Exactly. I think either way, this is a win. Either this was Trump intentionally putting someone out there to amplify to keep the COVID thing going and to set a precedent for someone who is bad on COVID getting shouted down, and then he looks flexible and magnanimous and he's responsive to his people. That's one possible option. The other possible, and with that story would be someone recommended him that Trump took him at his word and then had to get some egg on his face. So whoever made that recommendation is probably not going to be around much longer. I'd be very interested to know the backstory there, but I don't know if we're ever going to get that. The other story is that that Trump. Well, what was the first one? First one was Trump didn't know, and then was responsive and responsive to us, to the new media people. Not me, I suppose, because I was like, I think it's a net upgrade, honestly. But in either case, Trump is responsive to us. Either the first one is he did it intentionally, or the second one is he didn't, but he was still responsive. Either way, it's a win. Yeah, I can't imagine that Trump likes being embarrassed by a bad pick. So if this wasn't a intentionally planned thing, and I think it's pretty safe to say that these sorts of minor levels of so-called 4D chess are not remotely out of the possibility. Like, I think the Gates pick was very obviously a 4D chess move. You're the big ask, and then you withdraw him, and you ensure you get all your other guys through, and then you just give Gates a different role. Like, I think that's just basic politics. So either way, I think it's a win, and we'll wait to see who the new DEA pick is. So there's a story that's been going around, and we'll get to the Pete Hegseth stuff. There's a story that's been going around that supposedly, and this came from, I think this was, what is this, Wall Street Journal? Washington Post? I don't remember exactly where this came from, but Trump mulls replacing Pete Hegseth with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. The president-elect is discussing replacing the current Pentagon nominee as the former Fox News host faces mounting scrutiny over allegations about his personal life. So this is something that dropped yesterday, and the internet was all aflutter about it for a really long time. And there's a couple of takes I want to highlight here. Obviously, I don't have any personal direct insight in this, so I'm just going to accumulate what other people are saying and weigh it as it comes. Sean Davis from The Federalist says, sources with direct knowledge tell me this story is nonsense and indicate they've had enough with games being played on Hegseth's defense nomination by Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa and Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. So this story, he's saying that his sources are saying this story is completely nonsense, and it's a plot being cooked up by Joni Ernst of Iowa and Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. Joni Ernst is closely affiliated with the Doge Project, so this is some interesting palace politics to follow here. He says, one source said Graham, who never found a war he didn't want other people to fight, spent the weekend crying to Trump about Hegseth, while Ernst has been running an Inside the Beltway campaign to knife Hegseth. Sources say the Wall Street Journal article touting DeSantis is a key part of the Ernst-Graham operation to torpedo Hegseth because of his foreign policy views and opposition to endless, pointless wars. So that's one take. The other one, if this is true, then Elon Musk and Vivek need to kick her off the Doge team. The other story, this one comes from Brendan Leslie, who is founder of Florida Voice News. So we got a flog perspective here. He says, there's a ton of moving pieces to these DeSantis Trump rumors, but one thing I'm being consistently told by a lot of people smarter than me is they're probably true. We could see a world where the governor heads to this administration and Lara Trump to Senate. You could probably safely assume DeSantis' CFO appointment and his successor are also being discussed. Honestly, this is such a fun time to be working in Florida politics. OPS, as of now, Matt Gaetz is running for governor. He says the most likely scenario, if Governor DeSantis heads to the Trump admin, is his Lieutenant Governor Nunes taking over for the last 2 years. But that doesn't do anything to prevent Matt Gaetz and Byron Donalds from running. But who does Trump endorse? Ultimately, that'll decide who's the next Republican nominee. Does Trump pick them, or does he go outside the box with someone else? This is a very fluid situation. I would also like to add, Trump hasn't pulled his support from Pete Hegseth. This is a contingency plan if Pete can't get the votes he needs. So if we're, we're sitting here on the outside speculating on this. So I think there's a way that both of these could be true. That Trump is actually seriously thinking about DeSantis as a backup option. And Lindsey Graham, back here, Lindsey Graham and Joni Ernst are aware of that. And so they're trying to front run it to force the backup option. So they're trying to get Hegseth out of there because they want DeSantis. And so they're trying to put pressure on Hegseth by putting someone who's more famous and well-known and someone who's been pretty popular with a lot of Republicans, make him a possibility and encourage the other senators to vote against him. I think both of these can be true. that Trump is fully committed to HEGSETH, but he also has the contingency plan. They've caught a whiff that this is the contingency plan, and they're trying to backdoor it. Josh Ham says Joni Ernst wants to be SecDef herself, in my opinion, and that's another one that I've heard. Now, the reason why I think it would make sense for DeSantis to take a position like this is he needs to set himself up he needs to have somewhere to go after his term as the governor is up. And if he wants to run in 2028, I think his term is up in, is it 2026? Someone correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's 2026 or 2027. If his term is up then I think if it's 2026 and he wants to run for president in 2028, which I don't think he's going to be successful. I don't think he should run for president. I think it's been pretty clear that he's just not fit for that. But he needs to keep his political career going and not have run to the end of his term and then be kind of all right, well, now I'm going to start my presidential campaign and drag it out for a couple of years. So the other possibility here is that DeSantis moves to Rubio's seat. This is another speculation that I've seen, because that would be a similar sort of move. DeSantis moves to Rubio's seat and he sets up the chain of succession. So there's a whole bunch of moving parts here. You've got Matt Gaetz, you've got Byron Donalds, you've got DeSantis, you've got this open Senate seat because Rubio left. You've got the special election that's going to be held for Matt Gaetz' seat, and there's going to be a ton of horse trading that's going on here. Part of this, the Florida occupied government thing, is that the intra-Florida politics are going to become extremely important. In a way, sort of like how California internal politics have been very significant because of the significance of the figures within the different California seats and their relevance on the national stage. So the same thing's now happening in Florida. I don't think that from everything that I've read and everything that I've followed here, I don't think that there's a predetermined conclusion here at all. I don't think that anything, I think it is definitely a fluid situation, and there's lots of horse trading happening, and DeSantis having to make his contingency plans and figuring out the Senate seat. And there's also Laura Trump, who's a possibility for that seat. And I'm sure that Trump would want Laura Trump in that Senate seat, but he's going to need DeSantis's cooperation on some of these things. So DeSantis has leverage, and this is probably the point where DeSantis has the most leverage right now. Once a few of these decisions, a few of these picks get made, then he suddenly loses all of that. If, say, it is Laura Trump that gets put in that Senate seat, well, that's a piece of leverage that DeSantis has lost. So, yeah, that's my take. I think there's nothing that's completely determined, set in stone yet, and it's going to have to play out. Got a couple more things on HEGSETH, though. First of all, I cannot get enough John Fetterman. I feel like I probably shouldn't find this as funny as I do, but I can't help it. The dude's freaking hilarious. And I got to admit that this person here, genuinely, I think it's a guy, but you guys, I'm sure you guys see it. You thought that this was someone in particular as well, didn't you? Let's listen to what he says.
I'm considering voting yes on DeSantis if he finally admits that he has lifts in his boots. I'm sure he does. I think maybe 3 inches, 4 inches at least. Yeah.
This is the reason why DeSantis cannot run for president. He's cooked himself already in too many ways. He's just not a presidential candidate anymore. I think he's a very good executive. I think he'd be very good to have in a number of different operational roles, but he just is not a presidential candidate in the modern age. But I cannot. Fetterman is would that all of our enemies were like Fetterman. So HEGSETH has been making the rounds, and it looks like HEGSETH is another one of these non-negotiable picks like Kash Patel for Trump. Because he met with the Senate Majority Leader, Thune, who has a lot of the statements that are being released by a number of these different senators. I saw one from Tom Tillis. I saw Lisa Murkowski says she wants to meet with him and discuss. Johnny Ernst met with him and then released kind of a tepid statement. So we're seeing like real pressure being applied to these Republican senators now, because enough of them have made it clear that they don't want to vote for HEGSETH, but they're getting leveraged into it. Because it sounds like Trump has no interest in withdrawing HEGSETH. He's backing him completely. And so he sat down with Megyn Kelly. He's starting to do a media tour now, addressing some of these allegations that have been made against him. His mom has gone out. I don't know if you guys saw, there was the news report that was released of his mom, an email that she sent him talking about the way that he's been abusive to women and all this sort of thing. And his mom came out and said, what they didn't release was the email that I sent like an hour later where I apologized and said that I'd lost my cool and, you know, families have like internal turmoil. And she was pissed off that they released the email. So she came out and she did an interview defending him and effectively retracting what she'd said and talking about how corrupt and disgusting it is that the media is operating this way. So the wagons are circling around him. This doesn't at all look like something where, there was these stories they didn't know about and they nominated him and then, he's got all this corruption and scandal around him. And so they're going to have to try to scramble to put something together. No, this looks like they're going to the mat for him. But in order to do that, they've got to leverage some of these Republican senators like Lindsey Graham or Joni Ernst or Tom Tillis and Thune. Like they basically have to leverage them into cooperating, which may mean they have to give something else up somewhere else. But what all this whole process is doing is it's really highlighting, it's shining a bright, glowing spotlight on the people who prefer to operate in secret. So he sat down with Megyn Kelly. I'm not going to play this full clip here. It's 11 and a half minutes. But there's a couple of interesting points they make here at the very beginning of it. So I wanted to share those with you guys.
All right, so it's been an all-out assault since Trump named you.
No doubt.
From alleged rape allegations to allegations about your marriage to financial mismanagement allegations at your companies that you ran, your foundations, I should say. How's it going with Trump right now? Is he so far standing by you, and have you spoken to him?
I spoke to him this morning, Megan. He's amazing. He's a fighter. He's been through this himself. And he told me the last thing he said to me, two things he said to me when I left his office when he chose me, was, besides what he said about being a warfighter, we can get into that, was you're going to need to be tough as shit. You're going to need to be tough as shit. But he paused again as I was walking away and said, but you're the man for this moment. I chose you because you're the guy that's going to put the warfighters first. We haven't had that. We need a guy that's kicked down doors and understands the consequences of war and why us deterring war, fighting it, and winning it is important. He gets it. And we can get into the policy of all of that. But ultimately, he reiterated the same thing this morning. Hey, Pete, I got your back. It's a fight. They're coming after you. Get after it. I think he'll be delighted that we're talking today. And we're going to do more talking because for so long what was said about me, what has been said about me, it was so ridiculous and all anonymous that we didn't want to give it oxygen. You don't want to respond to things that don't merit response. And so we haven't. But sitting here with you and going forward,
he is a war fighter. He is imagine being Trump's top guy, right? He is that, but also he's got a lot of Fox News hosts in him. He very much talks like a politician. So I like the guy. I think he's very good for the role that he's being put in. But every time that I've listened to him talk, I'm like, the whole idea that, we're going to go get, we're going to get the military grunt from the field and have him come in. And, he's one of the, he's not a politician. He's a soldier, like that whole thing. He's very much a politician. He's very much speaks and has mastered that cadence. And there's a veneer to him that is where he's giving very carefully crafted, tailored statements. I'm not saying he's like memorizing lines, but he's not telling the whole truth. He's giving you a lot of euphemisms. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But like when he talks about we're going to sit down and we're going to talk again, and you don't want to give air to these things, and that's not how this has been going. Like they knew that this sort of shit was going to come up, and it's not like they need to go sit down and talk and plan out their strategy. He's telling a story about how everything is working behind the scenes, and that's not exactly how everything is working behind the scenes. You know that just from being around people, that the story is not plausible, but it is the type of story that you would tell as the cover story, like the public narrative that you want to present, because you're creating a guard behind. You're able to talk about the fact that we're having these conversations, but you're not having to actually get into the substance of them. He's a very good marketer. Yeah.
The media is driving with this ridiculous narrative. It's our time to stand up and tell the truth and our side. And he knows that. And so he supports me. I won't betray what we talked about specifically, but he said, you go meet those senators and I've got your back. It means a lot to me. It tells you who that guy is.
So you are meeting with them.
I will say that if he's reporting, if he's like saying, I met with Trump this morning and Trump told me this, and this, I don't think he's making that up. I think because like what? He's going to go back to Trump and Trump's going to be like, why are you putting words in my mouth? I think he's like, Trump has said these things to him directly, and there's been lots of other reports that affirm this. So I wouldn't doubt what he's saying there.
Any open wobbliness there? How do you like your chances right now?
I mean, Donald Trump won overwhelmingly, 76 million votes. He's got 53 senators, all of which understand what the American people voted for. They voted for the change that Donald Trump is going to bring. And they knew in the picks that he's made, he's bringing in change agents.
So there, like that's kind of the thing I'm talking about. She says, is there any like wobbliness there? And he says, well, you see, Donald Trump won overwhelmingly. He's got 53 senators. The people have said they want his picks to come in and they want to do this. This is like boilerplate stuff. He's not directly answering the question. And she's obligated. She has to ask that question because she's doing her job as a journalist. But he's dancing around the question.
If you wanted another general or another admiral or an executive or a CEO or a politician or a lawyer to run the Defense Department, we've tried that before.
He's answering it. He's dancing around it well.
Lethality, lethality, lethality. I want readiness, accountability, standards, warfighting. Pete, that's you, that's me. Clean house of the woke crap. All that stuff, all the climate stuff and the CRT and the DEI and the genderism and the get rid of it. Let's bring the Pentagon back to the people, the people's Pentagon for warfighters. And that's the message he gave to me that I've projected back to senators, and it resonates. When I get a chance to sit down, especially with these senators from the Senate Armed Services Committee, that's the committee I'm talking to, they care about the military a lot. They've run for office, spent their lives trying to invest in it. So the advise and consent process is a real thing. Like I'm hearing from these men and women, these senators who have great ideas, want to make sure that when I'm confirmed, we're able to implement them at the Defense Department.
They're worried about the military and the country and not necessarily your love life.
No.
Or your mom.
Or my mom, who did a fantastic job on Fox and Friends.
We're going to show some of it.
If we all went back 7 years, we would see that maybe we were not the people we are today. And I'm sure many of you across the country understand how difficult divorce is on a family. There's emotions. We say things. And I wrote that in haste. I wrote that with deep emotions. I wrote that out of love. And about 2 hours later, I retracted it with an apology email, but nobody's seen that. I want to say something about the media. And part of today is to discredit the media and how they operate. When they contact you, I let a few phone calls go, but then they call you and say they threaten you. That's the first thing they do. They say, unless you make a statement, we will publish it as is. And I think that's a despicable way to treat anyone. Threats are dangerous. I don't think the way you operate it feels almost criminal when reporters call you and threaten you. I don't think a lot of people know that's the way they operate. And they don't care who they hurt, families, children.
By the way, you'd be surprised how little that has come up. Now, when they ask, I answer candidly. I don't answer these questions to the hyenas in the hallway trying to chirp at my wife and I as we walk down the hallway. I don't owe them an answer. I owe an answer to the members of the United States Senate who are going to vote for a confirmation here. And my meetings with them have been fantastic. No one has looked me in the eye and say, I have concerns and I can't vote for you. In fact, most have said, let's take a picture and I'm behind you all the way. And that's a reflection of Donald Trump and the strength of his election, but also the mandate to change something at the Defense Department. So the meetings have been great. We're going to continue doing it. We're not backing down one bit.
We're going to get into the specific allegations, but let me start with this. Do you think you're being Kavanaugh'd right now?
That was it was a perfect question. I'm a really big fan of Megyn Kelly. I watch her show regularly. I think it's important to watch because she's like the much more normie-friendly side of the MAGA inner. I don't know if she'd just say inner circle, but she's very close to the inner circle. So She talks to some interesting people, and you kind of get that sort of perspective. And it's something that I'm doing on a regular basis to stay tapped into that world. I think she is absolutely someone. If you have boomer parents or people who they're maybe sort of warming up to Trump a little bit, but they need something to normalize it for him, she's very, very good for that.
I had a member not 45 minutes ago look me in the eye in private, just he and I, and say, that's what they're trying to do to you. That's what they're trying to do to you. That's their playbook. Get ready for more. And they're going to make it up, just like they have so far. All anonymous, all innuendo, all rumor, nothing sourced, no verification, and they're just going to keep doing it because you're a threat to them. You're a threat to their system. You're a threat to all the things in Washington, D.C., the swamp, the things that people have rejected. You're a threat to that. And so they're coming after you. And I know that. He knows that. And when you stand firm on that, it's not difficult to just continue to fight. So, yeah, we saw what happened, but guess what happened? Kavanaugh stood up, and he fought, and he won. And hopefully Republicans have learned that lesson.
And Trump stood by him.
And Trump stood by him. What you're seeing right now with me is the art of the smear. It is the classic art of the smear. Take whatever tiny kernels of truth, and there are tiny, tiny ones in there, and blow them up into a masquerade of a narrative about somebody that I am definitely not. And what they never quote, and we'll get into this too, are the legions of people from who I served with in combat, multiple tours, from the multiple veterans organizations that I very proudly ran, and I really want to get into that, and my time at Fox News. They never ask the people closest to me.
No.
They never ask the people who are involved directly. And when they do, and I've got a list right here of people, and Will Cain and my hosts at Fox News have come out, all the folks on Fox Friends have all come out and said, this is not Pete, and we've worked with Pete for 10 years, every single morning, every single day. They never ask those people.
Yeah.
And that's what a smear looks like. It's a couple anonymous nuggets, usually from disgruntled people who were fired for cause, who are jealous or want a little bit of retribution. And so they peddle stuff to reporters who are not interested in the truth. They're interested in smearing someone who supports Donald Trump's agenda. It's
strongly recommend going and watching that whole episode. But I think that the Kavanaugh comparison, like this is very good. Keep that in the lingo. Keep people talking about that they're trying to Kavanaugh him, because part of what that does is what was the result of the Kavanaughing? The Kavanaughing resulted in Kavanaugh being on the Supreme Court, and as Megyn Kelly said, Trump stood by him. And so after kind of letting this play out for a little bit, it's very clear that there's nothing of substance behind it. It's not like Gates was a legitimate, like, that story, regardless of the specific details or whatever. That story just itself existing made the nomination, the confirmation of Gates, just impossible. It was, as a political reality, it was never going to happen. With this here, he's absolutely confirmable. They're making a whole bunch of hullabaloo, and they're trying to squeeze out every last little bit of political capital that they have, because they see this as an opportunity to try to get a little pound of flesh in return for conceding to something that they really don't want, but they know that they can't stop it. And one of the things that makes me even more comfortable with HEGSETH, even though I do have he definitely is a politician. Like, he may be a war fighter, he may be Mr. Lethality. He's definitely a politician. He says, I'm doing this for the war fighters, not the warmongers. The left is afraid of disruptors and change agents. They're afraid of real Donald Trump and me. So they smear with fake anonymous sources and BS stories. They don't want truth. Our warriors never back down, and neither will I. And he got a pretty good endorsement here. This makes me pretty comfortable. Eric Prince says, hell yeah, Pete, you're over the target when you're taking fire. Continue mission. All right. That's the endorsement. Now, relatedly, so you've got him as SecDef, and Trump announced today who is going to be his Secretary of the Army. Army combat veteran Daniel P. Driscoll. Here's Driscoll serving in Iraq with the 10th Mountain Division, wishing his folks in Boone, North Carolina. He's a Boone, North Carolina boy. Served with the 10th Mountain Division.
I'm Lieutenant Daniel Driscoll, currently stationed in Baghdad, Iraq, from Boone, North Carolina. I just wanted to wish everybody in Boone a happy holidays. Mom, Dad, I miss you guys. Cassie, can't wait to get back and see you, and go Heels.
Good old white boy. Now, he has a very interesting very interesting background. Where is... I thought I had Trump's announcement where he talks about his background. Well, so he's been, what was his role? Senior advisor, I think, to J.D. Vance. And he is a... Let's see. Let's go back up here. So this is an interview he did with PBS a little while back. He attended Yale Law School. So he and J.D. Vance went to Yale together. And he's from Boone, North Carolina. And then he's been working in the venture capital world. He and Vance have been close friends for a really long time. This whole interview is pretty interesting. But this part was particularly relevant to our show here. Vance's admiration of Peter Thiel. So the interviewer says, in law school, Peter Thiel comes to speak, and I think JD has referred to this as one of the most formative moments of his time at law school. And he also met his wife in law school, so it's obviously significant to him. Were you at that speech? This is what he says. I was not. The place I plugged into the Peter Thiel story is we were at his kitchen table, and I was remarking to him how amazing it was that when you send emails, this is him being JD Vance. So this is Dan Driscoll talking to JD Vance. I was remarking to him how amazing it was that when you send emails coming from my upbringing, that makes it more dramatic than it seems coming from just normal life. The open rate to an email that you send to a stranger is, let's call it sub 5%. There was something magical about sending an email with the @yale.edu domain. So I'd been able to email some people to come speak or ask advice, and the open rate, let's call it, was in the 80% or higher. So we're sitting at the kitchen table. He was talking about having just seen Peter Thiel, and I was like, why don't you just email him? And he was like, well, I don't know how to get the email address. And so we sat there with both our laptops open and basically Googled Peter Thiel and then we picked his companies. Then we picked all of these different things to try and find his email address, and he ended up finding one at Stanford, so I guess Peter taught at Stanford. Hold on just a sec. I have a visitor.
Daddy?
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, man.
Oh, pizza's ready.
Pizza's ready?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'll come down and eat pizza in just a few minutes, okay? I gotta finish my show. I'll be down in just a bit, okay, bub? Close the door behind you, please. Thank you, man. So we sent him an email from the kitchen table that basically said, hey, I'm JD. I just saw you. I'd love to get together sometime. And Peter wrote back pretty quickly saying, hey, when you're on the West Coast, swing by my house. I'd love to meet you. I can remember from that moment, JD kind of having a strong desire to get to know Peter more, but I don't think anybody ever guessed it would have turned into this like deep, long relationship that was so incredibly valuable to JD over the last 10 years. So this is very interesting. I don't think anybody... I've never heard anybody talk about this story before, that this is how the JD Peter Thiel relationship was made. And now this is the guy who's going to be the Secretary of the Army. The interviewer says, and what did he see in Peter Thiel in that moment? He says, I think what he saw in Peter was somebody who'd created something from nothing and kind of forged their own way. And then I think what kind of uniquely made them spirit animals together is that they are both unwilling to be bent to kind of existing social norms. They are comfortable going to a place like Davos and having a kind of contrarian opinion, where I think it's very, very, very hard for most people, including very successful, rich, and powerful people, to go among their peers and stand out, fundamentally disagreeing with them. My perception of Peter, though I don't know him, is that he's like that. And then I do know that JD is very comfortable going to any group of people and kind of just genuinely and honestly staking his position and openly being very comfortable defending it. And I think that both of them are kind of abnormally willing to do that. This whole interview is very interesting. He talks about a lot about JD, the background of the publishing of Hillbilly Elegy, which is a very interesting story. He's obviously someone who's very close to JD Vance. So this is significant. We've got one of our guys who is close friends with the vice president, who's been in the venture capital world for a while now. He's not he's actually been downrange. He's a North Carolina boy. He's a businessman now. And he's going to be the Secretary of the Army. So the Army and the Vice President, the White House, the Vice President's office, have a very tight, close personal relationship. So you can guarantee that there's going to be loyalty there. Yet another loyalty pick. And I can imagine that that JD had a pretty strong say in this pick. $5 super chat from Samoa Bob. He says, Wholesome deserves 5 Eagle Bucks. Pizza. Yes, I'm going to be going and eating some Marco's Pizza here for my birthday in just a little bit. But before that, He's going to be Secretary of the Army, Josh. Hegseth is Secretary of Defense. This guy will be Secretary of the Army. There's one other very interesting pick that Trump made today. The new NASA administrator, Jared Isaacman, is nominated as administrator of NASA. Here's Trump's statement about it. I'm delighted to nominate Jared Isaacman, an accomplished business leader, philanthropist, pilot, and astronaut, as administrator of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Jared will drive NASA's mission of discovery and inspiration, paving the way for groundbreaking achievements in space science, technology, and exploration. Over the past 25 years as the founder and CEO of Shift4, more on this in a minute, Jared has demonstrated exceptional leadership, building a trailblazing global financial technology company. He also co-founded and served as CEO of Draken International, a defense aerospace company, for over a decade, supporting the U.S. Department of Defense and our allies. Jared's passion for space, astronaut experience, and dedication to pushing the boundaries of exploration, unlocking the mysteries of the universe, and advancing the new space economy make him ideally suited to lead NASA into a bold new era. Congratulations to Jared, his wife Monica, and their children Mila, and Liv. So this is the guy, and Rook was his call sign. He has an extremely interesting backstory. So just from Wikipedia, first of all, Jared Taylor. So Jared Taylor has made his way into the administration one way or the other. An American entrepreneur, pilot, philanthropist, and commercial astronaut. He was nominated by Trump December 2024, founder of Draken International, a private Air Force provider, and the founder and CEO of Shift4 Payments, a payment processor. As of September 2024, his estimated net worth is $1.9 billion. He was the commander of Inspiration 4, a private space flight using SpaceX's Crew Dragon Resilience, launched from Kennedy Space Center in Florida on September 16, 2021. The crew returned to Earth on September 18, 2021, after orbiting at 364 miles in altitude. The mission was part of a fundraiser for St. Jude's, to which Isaacman pledged to donate $100 million. He commanded the Polaris Dawn mission, the first private space flight in a series of missions named the Polaris Program. During this mission, on September 12, 2024, he became the first private citizen to perform a spacewalk. So here's his background. Born February 11, 1983 at Overlook Hospital in Summit, New Jersey, to Donald and Sandra Marie Isaacman. He is the youngest of 4 children. Siblings include Mark, Michael, and sister Tiffany. They lived in Union Township before moving to Westfield, New Jersey sometime around April of 1887, attended Wilson Elementary in Westfield from kindergarten through 6th grade, moved to Liberty Corner when he was 12, attended William Annan Middle School. As a 9th grader and freshman at Ridge High School, he discovered that he and his best friend Brendan Lauber had a knack for fixing computers. He attended Embry-Riddle, where he graduated with a bachelor's degree in professional aeronautics. In 1999, so he was born 1983. In 1999, he was 16. Isaacman founded a retail payment processing company named United Bank Card, which was later named Harbor Touch, a point-of-sale payment company based in Pennsylvania. He was the founding CEO and retained that role in 2015 with the company having, quote, been profitable for over a decade while processing $11 billion a year from 60,000 merchants, generating $300 million in revenues. So he started a payment processing company, a point-of-sale payment company, when he was 16. And was the founding CEO and retained that role in 2015. By 2020, the company had been named Shift4 Payments. He remained CEO, and the company was processing $200 billion in payments annually. In 2012, he co-founded Draken International, a Florida-based company that trains pilots for the United States Armed Forces. The company operates one of the world's largest fleets of privately owned fighter jets. Interesting. He co-founded a Florida-based company that operates one of the world's largest fleets of privately owned fighter jets. He's flight qualified in multiple military jet aircraft. He's performed in air shows with his Black Diamond jet team that he co-founded in 2010. 2010, so 14 years ago. So he co-founded that when he was 27. In 2008, he made a first attempt to set a new world record for circumnavigating the globe in a light jet, falling short by traveling around the world in 83 hours, just beyond the existing record of 82 hours. The record attempt was a fundraising event for Make-A-Wish Foundation. In April of 2009, on his second attempt, he set a world record for circumnavigating the globe in a light jet, making the flight in 61 hours, 51 minutes, and 15 seconds, about 20 hours faster than the previous record. He was made as a fundraising event for Make-A-Wish Foundation in New Jersey. He flew a Cessna Citation CJ2 with 2 other crew members, skipping stops in India and Japan, where he encountered hours-long ground delays in his previous attempt. In February of 2021, he announced he would serve as commander of Inspiration 4, the first private human spaceflight, in which none of the people aboard were from a government agency. The mission was operated by SpaceX, on board an autonomous Crew Dragon spacecraft launched by a Falcon 9 launch vehicle. He received the call sign Rook during flight training. In August of 2021, the crew of Inspiration 4, including Isaacman, was featured on the cover of a Time magazine double issue. It launched and achieved orbit, splashed down 3 days later. He made the first known sports bet from space, placing 2 bets on NFL football with BetMGM all over Las Vegas. In September of 2024, he commanded the Polaris Dawn mission, which is part of a crewed spaceflight program called the Polaris Program. The crew consisted of Isaacman, Kidd, Scott Poteet, Sarah Gillis, and Anna Menon, who rose to a record-breaking apogee of 1,400 kilometers or 870 miles. Why are we saying... No kilometers. Miles, please. This should be the other way around. You don't even need to mention the kilometers. Let the kilometer people do the math in their head. And later lower to a 430-mile apogee. The crew completed a multi-hour EVA on September 12, 2024, with all crew exposed to the vacuum of space, although Isaacman and Sarah Gillis were the only 2 that exited the spacecraft. They completed the first crewed demonstration of Starlink laser communication in space. So, we've got a NASA administrator who is a billionaire millennial fighter or a well-documented, accomplished pilot who owns a company, the largest company of private fighter jets in the U.S., who's very close with Elon Musk. You can put a lot of these connections together. We've talked about a lot. Jason and I have talked a lot about the sorts of influences within the United States that want to use the United States to its capacity. They want to actually untether the country and allow it to explore and innovate and build and create and protect its own borders. And there's a heavy overlap with a lot of banking, technology, military, tech people. This guy's right at the epicenter of all of that. And he's actually an equity holder in SpaceX. So we have an equity holder in SpaceX nominated to be the NASA administrator. I reached out to a friend who is employed with NASA and asked for a take on this. And the response I got was, I'm not feeling very good about my own job security. Now, absolute Giga Chad. This is the the millennial and Gen X takeover of the government. But oh man, it's all over, guys. He's Jewish. The saddest ding ever. I guess everything I just covered doesn't matter. It's all over. Man, I was so excited, too. President-elect Donald Trump nominated Jared Isaacman, a tech entrepreneur with close ties to SpaceX, to serve as NASA's next leader. Trump cited Isaacman's passion for space and experience as a private astronaut as among the reasons to choose him for the role. He is currently chief executive of payments technology company Shift4 Payments and hasn't served in government before, according to a biography. He's a billionaire who dropped out of high school and as a teenager founded the company that evolved into Shift4, which reported $2.6 billion in revenue for 2023. In recent years, he's helped pioneer the nascent business of private spaceflight, funding 2 missions that took him and others into orbit, both conducted by Elon Musk's SpaceX. In 2021, he joined a multi-day voyage that marked the first time an all-civilian crew reached orbit on a private mission. He led a 4-person mission that featured the first commercial spacewalk, during which they briefly popped out of the SpaceX's craft's hatch to test the company's new spacesuits. In a statement on X, he said NASA, under his leadership, will, quote, usher in an era where humanity becomes a true spacefaring civilization. Should he be confirmed for the role, Isaacman would take over an agency with about 18,000 employees around the U.S. and a budget of roughly $25 billion. The NASA conducts a sprawling array of work ranging from carrying out planetary science research to managing the International Space Station. Isaacman is an experienced pilot and co-founded a company that provides aviation training to the Pentagon and allied militaries. I'd be very interested to know what sort of connections there are between him and Eric Prince. As a businessman, he's a break from the norm compared with past NASA leaders who have often had government backgrounds. Bill Nelson, NASA's current administrator, represented Florida in the Senate. He's worked closely with SpaceX over the past few years as he and other crew members planned, trained, and flew with the company. SpaceX is a major contractor for NASA, with the agency paying the company about $2 billion during a recent year-long stretch to transport astronauts and cargo to the space station, develop exploration hardware, and other projects. A SpaceX spokesman said on X that Isaacman's appointment was exciting for the future of NASA and space exploration. In an interview last month, Isaacman said he admires the way SpaceX operates, describing its staff as the most brilliant and highly motivated people he'd ever encountered. The results they achieve are pretty amazing, Isaacman said, describing himself as, quote, lucky to be able to be literally a fly on the wall for what they're trying to do. Isaacman said in a letter to Shift4 employees that he planned to retain the majority of his interest in the payments firm, subject to ethics obligations. Shift4 shares fell nearly 11% after his appointment was announced. In addition to funding flights with SpaceX, Isaacman said in the interview last month that he owns SpaceX equity. Spokespeople who work with him didn't immediately comment. He said in the interview that he believes NASA will evolve as private space companies develop technology and set their own priorities. In the future, he said, NASA could have a certification role for astronauts and vehicles, similar to how the FAA oversees the commercial airline industry. Quote, the FAA doesn't build the airplanes. They don't staff the pilots that fly you from point A to point B, he said. That is the world that NASA is in, essentially. NASA currently operates one rocket, the Space Launch System. SLS has flown once on a 2022 test mission for Artemis, a NASA program that aims to return astronauts to the moon and explore Mars. Isaacman said in the interview that it was possible the Trump administration would be more open to alternative ways of getting to the moon and Mars at lower costs. There's a lot of people that would acknowledge, even inside NASA, that programs like SLS are very expensive, and that's pretty unfortunate when you think about there are other programs inside NASA that will have to suffer, he said. And I would take this as a euphemism. It would be possible that they'd be open to more alternative ways of getting to the moon and Mars at lower costs. That, to me, someone who knows better might be able to tell me more, but that, to me, is an absolute death knell for SLS. Anyways, so the millennial-occupied government continues apace, and there was a couple other names that dropped, but I want to do a little more research into them before I talk about them or weigh in on them. So, for now, let me check and see what some of your comments are, and then I'm going to go down and eat some pizza for breakfast. Yeah, ding. I'm very glad I've got the ding. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's see. Imagine staffing your agencies with people who've accomplished something instead of obese Jewish trannies. Right, indeed. Politically Catholic says, worst case scenario, NASA employees until next October to get jobs. Probably NASA employees have until next October to get jobs with SpaceX. We're revealing the existence of the aliens anyway, so we don't need NASA to hide them for us anymore anyway. Yeah, that's right. That's right. NASA has a decent private SWAT team. Yeah, I would imagine. The Department of Education has a SWAT team, so I'd imagine that NASA does too. Straight Buster says, update, tropical fruit Alps are solid as hell. Well, that's good to know. Mr. Buck Johnson received his Alps and gave them a rave review as well. There was a couple, let me think here. Before I wrap up, I wanted to give a couple other shout outs. So I mentioned the Orrin McIntyre talking about the quote-unquote woke right. You absolutely need to go listen to that whole thing. He just demolishes them epically. Then there was the Prudentialist and Ryan Turnipseed episode talking about the new right, the evolution of the different factions of the right. Very much recommend that one. Mike Benz on Joe Rogan. That one is... I'm probably going to have to collect some statements from it, but you kind of just have to listen to the whole thing. If you haven't listened to it already, I don't know what you're doing. Must listen. Joe Rogan, I've never seen him wrap a conversation so fast. The dude looked exhausted. He said, Joe probably spoke for a combined 5 minutes in the 2 hour and 43-minute interview. And Benz was just autism dumping like crazy. but I don't think you can underestimate the significance of that sort of information being going back to back. Mark Andreessen and then Mike Benz on Joe Rogan talking about the stuff they talked about when they did. It just opened up a whole new world to a bunch of FanDuel Americans that they had no idea existed. TC says, honestly, seeing Mike Benz going off on Rogan makes me feel uneasy. Yeah, I think if you know the background of Mike Benz, there's definitely cause to be suspicious. But for the time being, as long as he's revealing all of the stuff that he's revealing, I really could care less what exactly his motivations are. I think that there's utility in just having him talking about all this stuff, but definitely I would be, I don't know if suspicious, but skeptical of his motivations. So definitely listen to that one. I'll see if I can get some good clips to talk about on the show tomorrow. And then there was one other one I wanted to mention. Which one was it? I should have written this down, but let me go look at my history here real quick. I spent hours just listening to these really good conversations yesterday. So it was Mike Benz, New Right Fights with Ryan Turnipseed is the Prudentialist one. And Orrin McIntyre responding to the Trigonometry Bros was another one. And then, the other one was the Buck Johnson with his interview of Stormy Waters, part 1. There's a part 2 that's coming, and I can't wait to hear that one. So now that I've got those shout outs out, go watch those, listen to those, do whatever you do. Hit the like button as I head on out here. I appreciate you guys, the generosity of the super chats today. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for all the birthday wishes. There will be no Schizo stream tonight. The day didn't go as planned, and I'm going to spend some time with family on my birthday. So I don't know exactly when or if we'll have a Schizo stream this week, but stay posted. You can go to kingpilled.com, join the Kingpilled Discord to be a part of that. Follow me on Twitter at RealKingPilled. And I will see you guys tomorrow for another episode of the Astrolabe. For now, I give you Hulk.
They're my hero. And they tried to kill the next president of the United States. Enough was enough. And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother. Let Trumpomania rule again. Let Trumpomania